Go. Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately named IPA-USA. Cough. IPA-USA is a USA affiliate of the International Play Association. As part of our efforts to promote play, we're happy to introduce our Porch Play Chats. And these are conversations that focus on a wide range of topics from experts that are just as passionate about play as we are. You can find the latest Porch Play Chats, or learn more about IPA USA by visiting our website at IPAUSA.org. Up in that top right hand corner is the links to our YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram accounts. One Porch Play Chat is released every Monday on both the YouTube, Facebook, and website pages. I'm Deb Lawrence, president of IPA USA, and with me on the porch is Lisa Murphy. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, nice to be back.
And Lisa's a board member, and of course, if you know Lisa, an advocate for play. And with us on the porch is Sarah Allen. And Sarah is the founder of the Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting program. And she's a certified positive parenting coach, public speaker, and a published writer. And most importantly, she's a mom. And so Sarah's going to talk to us today about how playful parenting lightens our load, even if we're not naturally playful. So, Sarah, how does play make our lives easier, especially if we're not naturally playful?
I am so glad you asked. Thank you for having me. And by the way, if anybody is looking for me professionally, it's Sarah R. Moore. Sarah Allen is my newer married name, but Sarah R. Moore is how you can find me. Play, the wonderful gift that it is, it makes our lives easier in so many ways. First of all, everybody knows that it's more fun to be playful than to be, I don't know, a dictator, as sometimes we feel like we can be in parenting. So when we take a playful approach with our children, our stress levels go down, their stress levels go down, and when everybody feels more connected, it's just a happier existence. And that ultimately is what we all want. There are lots of other good things that happen when we play too. For example, if we start with play rather than using it only when nothing else is working, we naturally speak our children's language. We've heard the quote by Jean Piaget that play is the work of childhood. Well, play is also the language of childhood. And if we can approach our kids in ways that resonate with them, we have fewer power struggles, we have fewer battles, we just enjoy our day to day existence better. And when we're doing that, there's naturally more cooperation and all the other good things that come from that.
And relationships, right? So instead of being, we're building a relationship that with children that is sometimes different than the maybe dictator parent might have. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I should be careful how I phrase that too. I realize dictator parent comes off pretty strongly. And I know that none of us feels like we are that, but we do also know from science that traditional authoritarian parenting, where it's kind of the my way or the highway, you have to do what I say without question, that sort of thing, that has negative long-term outcomes for kids. So even though many of us find ourselves, despite our best intentions, sometimes feeling like we're telling our kids, just do it because I told you to do it,
Mhm.
we can kind of momentarily sneak into that uncomfortable territory where we know this doesn't benefit anybody. But fortunately, we have other options that we can put in our proverbial tool belt. And the more we practice, the more we can make those our defaults rather than some of the methods that we would rather be avoiding.
So one of the courses that I teach at my college, sorry, I don't know why my I'm coughing. So is uh, community, children, and families, right? And so we really focus on one of the big couple weeks that we do is parenting, right? And and it's so interesting, how everybody thinks everybody's had the same experiences they have to talk about those experiences and people are across the room are like, "What? That what? How how could that be?" And so it helps them understand that the children in their classrooms may have had very different sorry, experiences. Lisa, you may have to talk. Um, so I think it okay, I'm gonna let Lisa talk. You go.
Well,
I'm gonna go
I
get some
can I can
water.
I can maybe go where I think Deb might have been going, which just is that it can be very eye-opening when you realize that you don't have those shared experiences, whether you're approaching from a parenting styles, right? What we all know, that saying, you're going to teach the way you were taught unless you do the work. You're going to parent the way you were parented unless you do the work. And quite honestly, uh, we don't always have the level of do I say self-reflection, or maybe just sometimes we just don't realize that we got stuff we need to work on. And right, and so we're like, well, doesn't everybody do this? And you're like, oh no. And then you bring all the kids to the park as a former family child care provider, and you're all at the park and you see 9,000 different parenting styles, child interaction styles, and you don't have that shared negative or narrative, excuse me, that shared narrative. So if Deb, I might have filled in a little bit, but
You did
I want to
wonderful.
go back to where you said, but it can be very enlightening, be like, oh, well, I got smacked across the face when I said
Mhm.
something like that. Oh, I didn't get smacked across the face, but I got my Nintendo got taken away, or like, different responses to different, but to similar situations, but very different responses.
Well, and I think the other big aha moment is that sometimes they have to then internalize that, right? Because, were you raised in a home where you could talk to a parent about something you disagreed with? And, and they tell me, "No, my God, no." I mean, if I said I don't agree with that, I I I was punished physically. And 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 then sometimes because that's been their experience when they're in a classroom with children and a child is perceived by them as being disrespectful, it goes back from that. And so we make them sit with that for a little bit. Where did this come from? And so I'm sure when you're working with parents, they've had those experiences and they're having to reflect on where that reaction is coming from. Is that your experience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's an inner child that is very much alive and well, along with the child or children in front of us. And
Mhm,
any time the child in front of us behaves in a way that was not emotionally safe for our inner child to do when
mhm,
we were little, it's triggering. And it can be really, really tricky for us to break patterns because we have all this incredible neural wiring that has trained us. For example, anything from when I'm thirsty, I need to get a drink of water, just as real as when somebody says X, my response is Y. So if
mhm,
we look at the neurology of what we need to reprogram in
mhm,
those moments, that's really tricky stuff. And sometimes we need the help of a professional to, be it a parent coach, be it a therapist, be it, a partner who can help us see another way of reframing a situation. We really have to get comfortable going, wow, this feels foreign to me. Well, of course
mhm.
it feels foreign to us because if we haven't created the patterns that our brains direct us into, we are just going to continue perpetuating those old patterns. But back to your original question about, why play, especially when play doesn't feel natural to us. Well, many of us are stuck in adult mode in our adult brains. And along with that, if play was not our default for problem solving when we were little, or it wasn't accepted or encouraged by our special big people, it takes practice. This is a very conscious, mindful effort that we have to be willing to dive into when we either proactively, because we're a new parent and we say, I know I want to do things in a way that most benefits the children I'm raising, Or reactively, we know what's not working, or at least we know something isn't working, and we want to
Mhm.
find something that does and that feels right in our gut. Yeah.
So, and there's so many parallels here and so many things I want us to dive deep into. So, one of the pieces is that when you talk about it from a neuro's perspective, parents can sometimes forgive themselves, right? So there's a forgiveness there that it becomes cognitively available to them when they would feel bad if they did something and that guilt sort of stayed with them. And the other thing that I think is really important is that, in a classroom, when we have a child who has a challenging behavior, sometimes we get on the hamster wheel and we do the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, and it doesn't change the behavior because we haven't replaced the behavior with something that is more socially acceptable, right? And so those learnings for families do take practice, and it takes practice for a teacher in a classroom with children. But I would imagine how do you help parents change, replace that behavior that they struggle with, that they go, I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. I can't believe I did that. I feel so horrible about that, but I don't know what to do different. How do you help them?
Yeah, oh, such a good question. And my goodness, this has so many layers. But the first one is very much what you alluded to a moment ago. If we feel guilty about something that we have done, one of the healthiest and most important steps we can take is to give ourselves some grace.
Hmm.
If you put me in the cockpit of an airplane today and said, go fly it, I would say, which button do I press first? This is new to me. I don't know how to do this.
Hmm.
So, emotional stuff is no different. If we are trying to fly an emotional plane with our kids that we have never flown before, of course, we are going to need support. So, for a parent who's struggling with this, first of all, no, it's normal to be clueless. It's normal to feel like I don't even know where to begin.
Hmm.
And to give ourselves that grace and that forgiveness to say, I'm doing the best I can with the tools I have,
Hmm.
and I want to do better. So, particularly if guilt and shame were our parents' parenting tools,
Hmm.
the ones we're going to parent ourselves with, because we do get to reparent ourselves above and beyond parenting our children. So if we can say to the guilt or the shame, you're not welcome here. I'm doing the best I can. I forgive myself for what I've done wrong. And right here, right in this moment, I have an opportunity with my child to take a different path. And oftentimes, the next step from there is having a conversation with the child. Oftentimes, we feel so much guilt and shame that we think, I don't even know what to say to my kid. How do I start? Do I just, plus they've come to expect certain patterns, expect certain
Hmm.
behaviors of us. So even if we take a more gentle approach, our child might say to us a response that's the same response they would have given us if we had done a punitive or unpleasant type of discipline or punishment for them. So we can say to our child, you know what, I don't like the way I handled that earlier today or last week or whatever, and or our entire existence together, and I want to come up with some ways that work for both of us and that create peace and joy in our homes. I'm going to do the best I can. Here are some things I'm going to try, and
Hmm.
depending on the age and the maturity level of the child, you can ask for the child's involvement to the degree that, let's say you have a 10-year-old, for example, so certainly old enough to understand some of these things and would certainly understand an approach like that. You could say, hey, you know what? This is my responsibility and I own this. You're not responsible for my actions. And at the same time, if you hear me starting to yell, why don't we come up with a code word so that I can remember this isn't what works for you? And again, this is not the child's burden, but this is something you can say, what's going to work for us as a family? How can I support you better? And I'm sorry for the times I haven't. And once you articulate those things and make it safe to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
a whole new world opens up, because then you've given yourself permission to do something different, and you don't have to carry around the shame of the mistakes you've been making. And like I said, your family also starts to expect you're working on something new, so they won't hold you hostage in how you always have behaved up until this point.
Well, and think how empowering that is both to the parent and to the child to recognize that grown-ups make mistakes, and I'm going to make mistakes, but I have the power to change those mistakes, right? So when we think about that power, and we go back to the title of your session, how do we help parents be more playful even if they're not instinctively playful? Is that the way that you see a repair of relationships begin when parents begin to get on that level with their children?
It certainly can be. Yeah, this is wonderful news. There are lots of paths to repair. This is just one of them. And we can talk about other paths to repair in separate sessions, but
Mhm.
one path to repair is through play and connection. Not only does that mean, sit down with your child and just join in whatever they're doing from time to time, sit shoulder to shoulder with them and participate in their life, rather than feeling like adult is here, child is here,
Mhm.
we do our own thing, and I cook and they go to bed. Like, actually engage and participate together. That's part of play. And through that play comes bonding and connection.
Mhm.
But the other part of play that parents can use and repair is, as I alluded to earlier in the session, using play as the default starting point for
Mhm.
things that typically have been problematic. So, for example, if you have, let's say you have a preschooler or a kindergartner or an early elementary style, age child who is really into play and imagination mode. If you come in typically with the adult approach, it's time to go. You need to get your shoes, you need to get your coat, and we go to the car. What's taking you so long? Hurry up, get your shoes, get your coat, and you feel like this broken record. Nobody likes that. We as parents don't enjoy speaking that way, and our kids certainly don't like that, and it rarely works, and it certainly never supports connection. But in this same example, if you say, all right, play does not come naturally to me, but what if we call the shoes moon boots? And I'm not talking about 1980, whatever. You can just make up whatever analogy you want to. Let's put on your moon boots and let's walk to the moon together.
Mhm.
And let's go together. First of all, you go alongside your child, and what do you know, just like magic, when you put on your shoes and you put on their shoes, suddenly you're taking giant steps, and you just do something to make it fun and playful and non-confrontational. And next thing you know, you've gotten out the door. Everybody's wearing shoes. Everybody is still feeling happy and connected because you've taken a playful approach that is an imagination world for a child whose primary existence is imagination world. And you've done it in a way that does no harm, that's connecting, and is still effective. You've gotten the shoes on. That was your goal. And there are a million different examples of this, everything from bodily care to, how to treat one another. And I can share a lot of those here and elsewhere, and I do, in fact. But taking play as the default language, particularly around, especially if we put the forethought into where are usual sticky spots throughout the day.
Mhm.
How can I make those more lighthearted? How can I make them less confrontational? What would that look like? How can
And
I?
and how can I give children choice? What shoes do you want to put on today, right? It's if we could just
Hold on, let me jump in here. I
Mhm.
have found, specifically to what you were saying, Sarah, the humor piece, the humor element.
Mhm.
How many,
Mhm.
is like cameras looking in on my classroom and the classroom next door to me. Look at me sounding like, look at me. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying how many times the same exact scenarios could be mirroring each other in the classroom, and teacher A totally takes it personally, has that control freak, that adult kind of typical reaction, same scenario, and I turn it into, funny. Just a little bit of humor edge. Oh my gosh, look at you. You thought you were going to throw that block at David's head. And, not like, stop, don't throw the blocks, rah, 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 but just flipping it, just taking that pause. And I find that reflection piece before the reaction piece really serves us well in a role. I'm not a parent, but as a teacher, I would expect also as a parent, that really quick pause before we just react, before we do what we've been hardwired to do. I mean, those connections are nice and, that groove is right there, but we're being mindful of pausing and starting a new groove and having new reactions, new responses. I call it that pregnant beat, that ba 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 ba, that pregnant pause. And in our brain, like, it takes me longer to talk about it than it does in actual real time for it to actually happen. Like da 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 da. So
I love that. You're spot on. A quote that I love, that I learned from a friend of mine who's an early childhood educator, and she learned from her mentor, is don't get mad, get curious. And the curiosity is what happens in that pause. You go, what might I be missing? Let me get some more information, or let me be curious about why am I responding this way? How do I want to handle it? And it happens in a split second. Pause can be everything. And to address the example that you just shared, when that block is going at David's head, yeah, you can go in and flip out, or you can talk to the block. You don't even have to talk to the child who's swinging it. You can say, block, freeze, and block. Remember, you're for stacking, and you can still talk about why. You can still say, blocks hurt heads. Block, remember, you're a gentle block. You're great for stacking, and then model that. But that way you're not punishing or shaming, and you're being playful in a way that still gets your point across really directly without it being punitive or separating emotionally.
And I think that's an important piece of that puzzle, is that we still ultimately, for the most part, are going after the same outcome, but there's so many different paths to get there. And I think the message that you're promoting with the little bit of time I've spent on your website and our chat here today is one of how to not make it be so difficult, and how does a playful spirit, I would even add too, is that because I think another unintentional speed bump is that when we tell people to bring more play in their life, sometimes they'll default to something that one of the resistant, or maybe the reasons why they're a little resistant is like they think of being silly or being over dramatic, and they're like, that's just not my MO. And so that playfulness, I think, is a word to keep in our tool belts as well, because it might soften it or make it more doable maybe for some people.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of us are, just like we talked about, we're in our adult head most of the time. And it has nothing to do with being the funniest person on the planet. First of all, kids, fortunately, lucky for us, have really low standards for what's funny. We can do almost anything out of the ordinary, and they're going to think, wow, just because it's different, it's entertaining. But it doesn't have to be funny. It just has to be novel or somehow relatable to them, something that they can connect to and say, I like that. And it doesn't have to be even a tiny bit funny. It can be totally straight laced. A new approach. For example, normally we put on your shoes first. Today, what do you think we should, make your hat, your coat? What do you want to do? I mean, that's really not funny, but it's just something different to break up the patterns and get kids to realize that we're on their side, as opposed to trying to force them to do things all day, every day.
I think this is such a powerful message, not only for teachers who hopefully will use some of these practices in a classroom, but for families who feel like they're in this rut and they don't like it and they feel uncomfortable with it and they hear their mom or dad in their head all the time and it's coming out of their mouths and they're shamed by it, but yet you've given us some concrete examples of how you can make it more playful to strengthen that relationship where, if I'm a teacher in a classroom and I'm playful and children know I respect them and I hear them, I don't have as many behavior problems as if I'm in a confrontational mode. So here we go again, Lisa. You're gonna have to take over again. I don't know what happened. It's probably this is the fifth Porch Play
And
Chat, so
the
it's my
time frame,
voice.
the time frame here of when we're recording, the
Uh-huh.
last thing we need is, everybody right now is watching is like, oh God, she's got the Rona. I mean, it's thank gosh it's Zoom.
It's the fifth Porch Play Chat since this morning, so my voice is like, "Oh my God, what are you doing to me?" Um, but I think it's really critical that families understand there's an alternative way, and it's not as hard as I think it might be.
And
Um,
that it doesn't mean it's chaos and pandemonium. That's something that
mhm,
I have conversations about too, is that bringing a more playful approach to your teaching, to your parenting, to your family's house, to your board meetings, to your staff meetings, doesn't mean now that we're tossing responsibility and accountability out the window. It does not mean that the kids are running around naked with paint flying through the air and everybody gets to do whatever they want. We still have, there's still structures, there's still expectations, there's still boundaries. What we're giving up is that need to be so controlling.
mhm. Because
Yeah,
we think that'll be better. I, is
Because
what
people
teachers tell
mistakenly
me.
think that the control piece is what's going, yeah, no, no. The more we shed the control, the need for control, to start figuring out how to control the environment instead of the space, and how,
Mhm,
or excuse me, the space instead of the child, and that can be done playfully. You're not compromising your role as the adult or the grown up by
mhm.
choosing to have a playful style.
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah. And, another side benefit is exactly what you just mentioned a second ago. If we can lessen, not eliminate, but lessen the amount of conflict we
mhm,
have every day, the remaining conflict that is still around feels more manageable to all of us. It doesn't feel so oppressive.
Yeah.
And you're completely right when you say most of this is about control and most of it is about power. It's because we want kids, we want whoever it is to do things a certain way at a certain time that we have decided is right in our minds. Now, yes, there are certain things that need to happen in a certain way at a certain time. But when we have some flexibility around the rest of them that don't have to be so rigid, our kids know to take the ones that remain a little bit more seriously. So if
mhm,
we need to say to our child at some point, we need to go. I need you to put on your shoes right now. I'll come with you. In fact, I'll get them for you and I'll help you get them on your feet. We get less resistance from our kids because they know, wow, this is the only time today that he or she is taking this approach. So they must mean it this time. And the rest of the times we can just relax. We can lower our shoulders, we can breathe a little more easily, and just enjoy each other's company. Because you know what? Control, we feel it in our belly, we feel it in our chest, we feel it in our shoulders, all these places. And here's another tip that some parents might find helpful. If we feel that control rising up in our bodies, we go, but I don't feel playful right now. I don't want to do this. I just want my kid to comply. One of the best things you can do is change the position of your own body. You can stretch your arms. You can give your hands a massage, your arms. You can give yourself a hug. You can get into some position that feels different to you, because in doing so, you create new chemical reactions in your body and neurotransmitters fire differently and everything. And you naturally get more creative when you change your typical stance. So it's a really basic thing that doesn't involve any words. But if you can change your body, it
mhm.
helps you change your mind.
Which is why we say get up, get physical, move around, right? Because it does get you in a better, do some cross lateral things, right? So that you can you can get in a different space. And I think teachers sometimes and parents sometimes do feel that it has to happen this way, it has to happen right now. Or I remember actually standing in front of parents as a director of an early care and education program. They would come in and I would run and get in front of them and say, "Stop. I don't want you going to your
Turn around
child
3
like
times.
that.
Turn around 3 times. Do 2 jumping jacks. Now you may proceed.
Let let's talk. Let's go have some coffee. I have cookies. I do anything to get them to sort of decompress, and because they didn't realize they were, you know, when they walked in the door, and they were reacting to whatever had just happened, either at work or on the drive, and I would much rather them take it out on me than to take it out on their child. And eventually, after I had to do that a couple of times with them, they would stop in the office and say, "I just need to sit here for a minute." And I'd say, "Great. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Do you need a cookie?" So, because then they knew it was a safe place, right? They could they could have some self-regulation because they recognized where they were, right? And so I think that takes practice, and it takes courage, I think, for them and for those who are working with them to say, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated, but it's what you do with that we have to work on, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, to your point, one of my mini courses that I offer is about, 10 different ways to stay peaceful in the moment, because
Mhm.
it's those in the moment situations when, like you said, you're all riled up and your body is in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and you feel like these are the only options biologically because I'm upset. These are some things you can do to get yourself back to a more regulated state, because guess what? A dysregulated adult will never regulate a dysregulated child. So
Right.
if we can do some of those things and get back to a point where we naturally create the pause while we're doing them, then we can have a fresh perspective about how can I make this lighter
Mhm.
for all of us. And, we can't underestimate the importance of engaging children in solutions
Mhm.
as well. I
They are humans and have a voice, and we need to listen to it sometimes, or we need to ask questions. Sarah, this has been incredible. I'm sorry, I coughed through the whole thing, but it's just my
We still
voice.
love you, Deb. We still
I
love you.
I know, so sorry. I do not have COVID. I am fine. Um, but I think the importance of your message and the strategies that you've given us will give even teachers and parents who listen to this Porch Play Chat a starting point, right? That y- it we can change this, and it's not hard. It just takes practice, and you and your child can have a better relationship, or you as a teacher and the children in your classroom can have a better relationship if we think about being more playful. And so I'm going to close this up, but don't go anywhere. And I'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. So to learn more about, or to find more information on Porch Play Chats, or to join IPA USA, please visit our website at IPAUSA.org. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye bye. Thank you.